Hello, my name is Robert Ryu. I'm the Director of Innovation and Technology at Real by Fake, and I would like to introduce you to our new Videogrammetry system. Video what? Videogrammetry. But before I do that, let me take a minute to talk to you about photogrammetry. The concept behind photogrammetry is to take pictures of an object or a set from as many angles as possible. You then bring these pictures into a software that will reconstruct the geometry. And once the processing is done, you can bring it into your favorite 3D software. Now one day somebody said, hey, why don't we try this at 24 frames per second? So this is an example of the kind of results you can get with videogrammetry. You have total freedom with the camera, you can move it any way you want, and the character is perfectly integrated because he is full 3D. The big difference between videogrammetry and mocap is that in mocap, you only capture the body, you only capture the movement. In this case, we capture the performance, we capture the facial expression, we capture the close deformation, we capture everything. This is our studio. We can take it down if we want to and move it to any location where it's needed. The red center is the capture area and it varies between 2 and 5 meters. Once everything has been processed and cleaned up, we have this add-on that we created for Blender to import the geometry, and I have the options to have variations. So let's say I want to have 10 of them. So it will extract 10 characters from different places from the sequence. We also have an option called blue key on texture, and that allows us to key the clothes if the character was wearing blue. And we have different options for keying. So now we generated 10 characters, and they all look like they have different clothes, and that's because we keyed them. This is done directly in Blender. We don't need to go through compositing for that. Let me show you. For example, instead of keying the blue shirt, I will key her face. So if I click here, you can see the faces change color, but the shirts are back to blue. But we don't want that, so I will go back to blue. So I will just key the shirt. And now it's up to me to play with the shader parameters to get the result that I'm looking for. I can even adjust the tolerance so I can get the pens too, because they are blue after all. And now at this point, I just play with the settings until I get the desired look. I have many settings I can play with: the hue, saturation, the value. And we actually have 4 different systems for keying the clothes and change the colors. And one cool thing about our system is that even if we make copies of our characters and our instances, they will all have different colors. And this is another method that we have to change the color of the clothes, but this one is not based on keying. And it has a very small impact on the skin color. We have the ability to add accessories, in this case hats, but they could also be weapons like swords or anything. This is a test that we did capturing 6 people at the same time. There are some issues with the ground contact because there were not enough camera information, too much occlusion to really capture all the motion. But once they start dancing, it's pretty good. Also, the capture is limited at 65,000 polygons. So that means that if you have 6 people, each of them will get about 10,000 polygons. You can see the comparison here with one model alone and with the 6 dancers. We also made a test to bring one of the characters into Embergen to see if we could make it burn. And it works. You can see that there's some flicker on the character. That's because Embergen doesn't support alembics that are changing geometry at every frame, which is the case for videogrammetry. But it still works, so when the character gets into the box, he will catch on fire, and even if there are some flickers from time to time, it won't affect the simulation. And the guy burning is actually me. Now at this point, you must start to realize how powerful and incredible this technology is. Videogrammetry is very good for mid to background characters. It's not designed for close-ups. It's very good for crowds. I will show you some examples later. Same thing for extras. You can add props, like I said before. You can do VFX. We support motion blur. A lot of the videogrammetry systems don't support motion blur because they are designed for VR, but we can do it because in VFX we need motion blur. We can also generate a skeleton, so if you have a character that's supposed to transform into a monster, you could capture your character and then continue the animation with the skeleton that will have the exact same movement as the capture. We have the possibility to export the captures for gaming, so for Unreal. It is affordable. What I mean by that? Well, I will show you some examples later. When we do the capture, we don't light the model. We use the light that's on the setup, so you don't need to have your director of photography on set when you do this. You don't need any kinds of permits to do videogrammetry, and also we can move the system to any locations. But there are some restrictions you need to be aware of. Just like for photogrammetry, we cannot use transparent objects, so like water bottles or glasses. We cannot capture any details that are smaller than 6 millimeters. For example, a cigarette. We would have to redo it in 3D. We cannot do free-flowing hair because, again, it's smaller than 6 millimeters. We cannot shoot reflective material because it would reflect on the green screen, so if we had to shoot a sword, we would use a wooden sword and replace it later in post-production. Obviously, we cannot do green clothes because we're shooting on a green screen, but khaki colors are okay, so army stuff, that works well. We are limited to a 5-meter radius for the capture area, but if we need somebody walking or running, we can put them on a treadmill. Ideally, you don't want to capture more than 2 people at the same time. Okay, so now let's talk about crowds. The traditional way to create crowds is to shoot a small group of people, move them around, and shoot them again, and clump everything together at the end. And if the camera is moving, you will need a motion control camera. It's a long and expensive process. For very large crowds, another way to do it is to shoot people on green screen and put them on cards that you can spread all around the stadium. That was the method that was used for both Rocketman and Bohemian Rhapsody. The problem using this technique is that if you move the camera on the side, you will see that the characters are actually flat because they are cards, and you can't relight them. But if you use 3D models, then you have total freedom to move the camera any way you want, and you can also relight the entire crowd. Now this is what we can do with our Videogrammetry system. You can move the camera any way you want, you can relight the scene too. Videogrammetry gives you freedom. For example, let's say you work on a TV series, Star Wars or Star Trek, and you have all these aliens that keep coming from one episode to another. Well, if you shoot them on blue screen, you are stuck with the camera angle you had with and the lighting that you had at the time of the shoot. With Videogrammetry, you don't need to worry about this because you can replace the camera anywhere you want, you can shuffle your aliens anywhere you want them, and you can relight them to fit in your environment. Now let's take a look at this other example. Now imagine if you had to shoot this for real in New York. You would need a permit, you would need to close the street, you would need the camera crew, you would need security, you would need everything. It would cost a fortune. Or you could just spend half a day in our Videogrammetry studio and capture all your actors, and the rest is a full CG shot. And if you need the shot at night, well, you just need to relight the scene. Now I'm going to show you a few shots where we added characters using Videogrammetry. Imagine the scenario, okay? Shooting is over, and now the director wants more characters in the scene. But these are complicated shots because the camera is moving, there's a lot of interactive lights and everything. Imagine how you would do this without Videogrammetry. So for each shot, I will show you the characters in white so you can really see where we added the characters. So if you had to shoot this on a blue screen, that would be complicated because you have interactive lights, you have moving cameras, so you'd have to redo all these lights and all these camera movement in a studio using motion control. And you would need to perfectly match the lighting. There's a helicopter spot on this one. So we all know how complicated it is to match a blue screen shot with a real environment. Well, this is way much easier. If you think this technology could be useful for you or you would like to get more information, feel free to contact us.